there ought to be an ICD-10 code for working constantly every single day in a dumpster fire. Okay, literally in a show. Okay? So we went into medicine to take care of patients, but now we are burdened with the third-party payer rules. And there are ways to maximize and play the game better by understanding these rules.
Welcome to A Life True to You. This channel is all about supporting high achievers to live a life that's true to themselves and free ourselves from the societal expectations and pressures that often lead us astray. I am on a personal mission to bring the humans back into the healing. And if those missions and the content resonates with you, make sure to smash that subscribe button if you haven't already. In this video, I had the honor of hosting Dr. John Lin. John is a urologist and he practices in solo private practice. He also hosts several YouTube channels and has a Facebook group called the Thriving Urology Practice. And in that Facebook group, he shares his passion with helping physicians on questions with coding, medical billing, and practice management so that they too can be successful and practice medicine on their own terms. When I asked John how he'd like to be introduced, he said, as an immigrant living beyond the American dream. And he'll share with us what that means for him. He also shares with us an experience with a very serious medical event that left him questioning, if I died today, what would I regret? Am I living in alignment with what matters most to me? And that question is near and dear to my heart. It's one that I highly encourage us to revisit regularly. If we died today, what would we regret? Are you living a life true to you? As you tune in and you hear John's story and his lessons, we'd love to hear your questions, your thoughts, your reflections in the comments. And now, let's dive in. Well, hello, everyone. Welcome back to the channel, or welcome to the channel if you're new here. Today, we have Dr. John Lin. He is an immigrant who is living beyond the American dream, and now his mission is to help pay it forward for others. So we'll learn a little bit more about how he does that. But before we do, John, thanks so much for joining me today.
It is my pleasure, and I hope someone will get some value out of our conversation today.
And I have no doubt you've already, before we were recording, shared so many tidbits and have such grounding in life in so many different avenues. So I really appreciate you being here.
Yeah, I can't wait.
And for people who haven't had the opportunity to meet you yet, can you share a little bit more about you?
Absolutely. I am extremely grateful to be here where I am today, to be having this conversation, because coming from the States when I was younger, I was 11 years old, I quickly realized that this is a completely different environment, and I was an outsider. I also quickly realized that we were poor because my brother and I qualified for subsidized lunches. And back then, you did not have a swipe card so that when you went up to pay for your lunch, no one knew if you were getting a free lunch, literally a free lunch. What would happen was we were called up to the front of the classroom by our homeroom teacher, and we were literally handed what looks like a raffle ticket. It is a raffle ticket. You know, you have a big roll and you tear it off. They would hand that to me every single day when I was in school. So imagine the shame that I felt. So that's where I started, and struggling with the language, struggling with fitting in, because growing up in Taiwan, there was no really interaction with any girls. There's no holding hands. There was no makeup for the girls. Everyone wore uniforms. We learned how to march in formation. That was in elementary school. So imagine the transition, the shock going from that environment to the United States. And then I struggled through the language barrier, went through high school, somehow got very, very lucky that the counselor recognized that I could excel and put me in honors classes because my parents had no idea. I didn't have any idea. And I hung out with the right kids, which allowed me to go to college. And unlike most physicians, I would say, obviously not a legacy. My parents were not physicians or nor in healthcare. And I was able to, I did not jump directly from college to med school. I worked a little bit and worked in entertainment business management, believe it or not.
I do believe this after everything that you've introduced me to on this YouTube game of yours.
So entertainment business management in a CPA firm in Beverly Hills. I was making $28,000 a year. I was like so happy, so happy. Not before working at Target before then, and I also worked as a secretary. And what my role at the as an administrative assistant was pretty much a secretary to a female entertainment business manager. So she's a rare breed, number one. And number two, I literally took dictation. So she would speak and I would type and correct grammar and everything like that while she dictated to me. So that's how I started. And then I went into went to medical school and got into urology, and the rest is history. Urology changed my life, and it's changing my family's life. I am so lucky, so blessed beyond belief. And what I do now is to share what little I know with anyone who will listen to hopefully improve their lives.
You're so humble. You're absolutely humble. I met you and you're so kind. And I've watched your YouTube channel and you're sharing, you downplayed it, but you're helping people really take agency over their practice and learn the things that often aren't taught in residency in medical school about billing, about coding, about practice management. And of course, you've got your YouTube technology down. So I really want to say thank you so much. And where can people be watching you on YouTube?
I actually have several YouTube channels, Sunrise Urology, sunriseurology.com. And also, let's see, there's John C. Lynn, MD, where you can watch the content about practice management, coding, billing, because most of us participate in a third-party payer game, if you will. And whenever there's a game, there are rules to the game. Those who are better with the rules, who understand the rules better, they tend to do better. They tend to collect more money. And there's so much, we can go into this if you want. Before our recording, I said there ought to be an ICD-10 code for working constantly every single day in a dumpster fire, okay? Literally in a show. So anyone who works in medicine knows that there's these prior authorization requirements and the administrative trivia, we call it administrivia, every single day. We went into medicine to take care of patients, but now we are burdened with the third-party payer rules. And there are ways to maximize and play the game better by understanding these rules. These rules are constantly changing. For instance, the evaluation and management codes changed in 2021, which was huge. But a lot of people are still not leveraging the advantages of using the better, easier, less documentation E&M codes from 2021. So anyway, sharing this type of information hopefully will allow physicians to not suffer as much burnout, because I'm very fortunate in that I cannot relate. A lot of urologists, physicians will ask me, John, what do I do now given my current career situation? So I know you do coaching, but I don't have any certification in coaching, but it seems like I'm doing coaching every single day. So when they ask me, what should I do now? My answer is always, you need to have self-awareness first. Are you okay running your own show like what I'm doing? Or are you better off working for somebody else? And I'm glad there are people who like to work for themselves versus being an employee. Nothing wrong. Either way, however you want to do it is okay. But You need to maximize your potential in whichever environment that you're working.
Yeah, grow where you're planted, right? And also, I feel what you're capturing is helping give people the tools so that when people are considering leaving the employed position, they're often afraid, right? Stepping into the unknown, and you are a urologist in solo private practice. So, when I'm thinking about the things you've overcome, I'd love to step back in a little bit about the things you overcame early in your life and what helped you, and also how that is showing up now and how you're leveraging those skills now to lean into this place that many people are afraid of being in solo private practice.
Yeah, definitely. Well, not a legacy, parents not in healthcare, grew up poor, so I borrowed my way through medical school. So that's about 225, $250,000 in debt, including interest. And then my wife had a little bit of debt going through her schooling, so I inherited that too. So now I have this big mountain of debt to service. And unlike most or many physicians, we did not purchase a McMansion right out of residency when I got my first real job, if you will, and making six figures. We did not buy a house. We did not buy any fancy cars. No G wagon. And I ended up working at that job for 3 years, and then okay, now what? And an opportunity came up, a subsidized hospital subsidized type of a position, which allowed me to open up my own practice. Basically, I took out another loan for $250,000. We had two kids under 2 years old. I was moving to a brand new city and built up a practice from ground up. I didn't know anything other than the fact that I can't fail. I just have to keep going.
You
So
can't fail. You
I
can't
can't
fail.
fail. I
So,
can't fail because too many people depend
mm,
on me, and I had that huge burden of this debt that I had to service without any G wagons, without any houses.
it's so important to know. I feel that, you really said that you're living beyond the American dream and just shattering our need to drive ourselves to own these materialistic things with the eye on the prize of reducing debt so you can have more freedom, right? Or what was your end goal? You have this responsibility. What was your vision going into the private practice?
So when you grow up not having much, I always feel like I have a chip on my shoulder. I always have to prove something. I always have to be do something, do things better. Whether that is creating content, having a studio set up,
Mm,
audio, microphone, lighting, etc. I always try to think, how do I do this better? How do I do this better? I always have that not enough mentality.
mm,
So I didn't really have a goal other than I need to be financially set. So I don't have to worry about it. I don't want to be a burden to my kids. And in addition, I want to be able to take care of my kids, my parents, my spouse. I want to make sure that is taken care of. Really, that is the only goal when I first started. But then once you get to the point where you don't worry about finances anymore, then you start thinking, okay, well, what is the meaning of life? Right? Why am I doing what I'm doing? And I think for me now is to leave a legacy that is beyond my family and my patients. And that is to help other urologists, other physicians. And unlike a lot of people where they're selling courses and stuff or master groups and masterminds and things like that, I do it for free. So I created a Facebook group called the Thriving Urology Practice Facebook group, and it is completely free. And we don't allow any vendors in there. We just have urology working folks who work in urology in that group. And we share tips and tricks on practice management, coding, billing, where to get whatever supplies, drugs for the best deal. And I share how I perform vasectomies because I can do the procedure very efficiently. And that's helped a lot of people as well. So anything you can think of, we share. And this is my way to pay it forward.
And urology, often, whenever I see a list, is one of the highest, if not the always highest, on the burnout list of what medical specialties have the highest rate of burnout. Why do you think that is?
Survey bias, maybe, because I think all physicians are going through the same thing. There's a lot of administrative trivia that get in the way between us and the patient. So, for instance, a patient wants to come in, you have to worry about the copay, co-insurance, make sure the patient has a prior authorization or get an authorization to see you by somebody else, a third party. You have to make sure that you are complying with HIPAA rules and No Surprises Act and information blocking. So those are just some of the things that are just weighing on the practicing urologist, not to mention the documentation requirements for compliance, if you will. So those are all things that get in our way to take care of patients, which is our only goal. So those things, I call that, well, as you know, moral injury, or I call it death by 1,000 cuts, right? It's little things here and there. And for instance, in the operating room, it's having operating room staff or tech who doesn't seem to know anything about your case every single time. So every single time you go in, it's like you're doing this case as if you're doing it for the first time to that particular staff. So that is frustration, and not having the little instruments there for you, maybe a burr or a drill or some sort of a device to tighten down some screw. It adds up. And it's not just one case, it's almost every single case and every single time you step into the operating room. And for a lot of urologists, a lot of physicians, you come into the work environment and you have very little agency, very little control over your work environment, the type of equipment that you use, the staff that you hire or fire. You may not have any control over that. And sometimes the hospital system may be dictating on what you can or cannot bill, or at the level at which that you can or cannot bill. They often change the coding on the back end. Even though you may bill a level 4, they'll change it, they'll down code it to a level 3. And then the physician gets attributed to a lower production, if you will. So you feel like you're working extra hard, clicking all the boxes, crossing all the T's and dotting all the I's, and then you feel like, the analogy I make is you feel like you're running on a hamster wheel. Worse yet, worse than not getting anywhere, you're running with lubrication or grease under your feet. So you're not even turning the hamster wheel. So I feel badly for those docs who don't have any control. And I think burnout has a lot to do with lack of control over, lack of agency over whatever's happening around you.
Or in the real lack of agency and perceived, right? It's the learned helplessness that we often get from all the things that are very much outside of our control. And then it takes away from what is within our agency, right? And if you're really burnt out or gone into the deep, dark depression, it's really hard to get thoughts that offer you alternatives and to think creatively and to have hope. And you had grown up and had adversities where you were coming over to a different country in a lower socioeconomic class, and you have kept going with this sense of optimism, I'm gathering. And I was curious as what was the most helpful for your mindset throughout those stages?
Well, first of all, I didn't know any better. There was no internet back then, and I had that scarcity mindset, obviously, that chip on my shoulder, the feeling like it's never enough. And I have to catch myself nowadays. I have to realize, you know what? It's okay. You have enough. Your family has enough. Now you need to step back and continue to accept the fact that there's abundance. There's huge abundance. So having that abundance mindset it changes your mind, changes your perspective on life. How I got there, I don't know. Podcast and reading books and listening to other people like you, sharing messages about hope, about things that you can do, and you can shape your perception and help yourself grow instead of always feeling like you're stuck in one position, one station in life. You can make those changes to help yourself. And if you can't, then seek help. Have somebody help you. One of my regrets, and I've said this before, is that first of all, there was no internet. So asking for help in my very limited circle of relationships was very difficult. But now there's internet. Asking for help. I wish I asked for help sooner and more often. Because we're trained to be self-sufficient, right? In surgery, in medicine, if you ask for help, that's a sign of weakness. But it is okay to ask for help. I'm very, very saddened every time I hear about suicide of any sort, especially physician suicide. One of my colleagues. It doesn't have to be that way. And often we are shamed into asking for help. So hopefully we can change that mindset.
Yes, I think about, so I spent many years not asking for help, or even if I did, I acknowledged I had suicidal ideation very profoundly for 3 years when I was a surgical resident and started my journey in oral surgery. No one talked about it. I was in the military and they said, get help if you're having trouble. So I did get help and I ended up losing my career. And it ultimately, I had in my mind, when I reflect back, I'm like, oh man, if I didn't ask for help, how would life have been different? Right. So, one thing, maybe I wouldn't have got kicked out of the military. More realistically, I wouldn't be here sitting with you. Right.
Yes.
Because that was where I was at. And so we are often staying quiet to preserve our career. And I can't say this enough because it was like profound to me. I'm like, we stay quiet, don't ask for help to preserve to save face. It's our ego, right? And we have been wrongfully told that asking for help is a weakness. It's actually a sign of courage and humanity. And people really want to help you, people that care about you. And if they make you feel worse for asking for help, those are not your people.
Mm-hmm.
But then I was like, it was profound years later when I finally surrendered the guilt and shame. I was like, we are taught that our careers are more important than our life. And as a military member, that was very much true. As a surgeon, very much true. Like you sacrifice yourself for your career. I'm like, you said you're living beyond the American dream. I'm like, I'm going to set that American dream image on fire. It's not what brings us peace and happiness and fulfillment. Being in community with people who truly care about you, connecting through love, having a sense of meaning and purpose, giving back, a lot of those things that are taken away in our current society because it's a very individualistic society. That
Yes.
like, I'm going to compete over you rather than us being here with a shared interest in helping people. And I want to help the people find you, and you're helping me to get these messages out, and we work together for the greater good of the community. Like that's what humanity is. And our education system really reduces us to robots and reduces our emotional expressivity. Like that's just not the way. We need to reclaim the narrative and create a life that is truly fulfilling to us, however we define that.
Like you said, it's not really humane to suppress, which is what medicine residency does, what military does, to suppress someone's humanity. If you're feeling stressed out, if you have suicidal ideation, that should be brought out to the forefront. And even though it's not, in regular military service in medicine, the problem is, listening to a lot of your videos, the big problem, as you mentioned, is that if you mention it, if you bring it up, airline pilots, physicians, your job is at risk, or even in military, your job is at risk. So a lot of times we have that sunk cost fallacy. You're thinking, oh, I invested all this time and money going to medical school, and now I'm in a residency. I've already spent all this time and effort. I can't go back. And the answer is yes, you can. Okay, you can drop everything. I'm constantly thinking about alternatives. What is the what are my so in business there's something called SWOT analysis. You look at your strengths,
Yeah.
weaknesses,
Uh-huh.
opportunities, and threats.
Hmm.
I'm always looking at the SWOT analysis no matter what I do. Whatever procedure that I'm about to bring on into the office, so what is going on in my current practice. So you want to take account of what's going on, SWOT analysis, and then behave, react, execute based on those things. In medicine, in military, if you show any sign of weakness, you're pretty much out. And that's the problem. If you're suffering, you're afraid to speak out.
Hmm.
And it shouldn't be like that.
No, some message that was life changing for me was from Brene Brown, who does speak to military people on this. And she said that in her research, what she found at the core of the people that had the highest levels of mental toughness, what do you think it is?
I don't know.
Well, I thought it was we beat ourselves down and build ourselves up, right? We're the most resilient, quote unquote. I know that's a huge activating word for people now, but that's wrong, right? And in my surgery days, I tried hard to grow thicker skin. That didn't work. She found that for the people that had the highest levels of mental toughness at their core was profound self compassion. Of course, like those are the people who are going to recover quicker. Say someone in the OR was criticizing me in an attempt to make me be a better surgeon, right? You hear the term pimping a lot and a lot of the hazing that goes on, and more so what we hear is the traditional military and surgical culture. And because I had low self-esteem and already came in with self-doubt from, my childhood and on, that just cascaded into thinking, you're right, I don't deserve to be here, and then went down to profound depression, and then ultimately like my life is not worth living. Like it was just this catastrophic type of domino effect. Had
Yeah.
I had self-compassion, I could have learned this person's education style, their leadership style, quote unquote. Not all people in leadership positions have leadership styles that are effective. Just so people know and are aware. It's true. You're gaslighted into thinking that you're stupid and that you don't deserve to be there. That's not accurate. Check the health of the person who's providing you this information and what it's bringing up for you, right? I could have separated this person's leadership style, quote unquote, and what it was bringing up for me. It's like, oh, this person's communication style is bringing up within me all of the self-doubt I've had over years of not thinking I was ever enough, just like you were saying, and not feeling smart enough, not being offered innate love and safety. Like, wow, had I just had self-compassion, I could have heard what she said and resisted that from propelling me down this cascade of to worthlessness.
I'm glad things are changing nowadays, though. We're recognizing that this is not a good, healthy way to sustain healthcare, and gaslighting. I use that word often in my Facebook group. We're being gaslighted into thinking our worth is just a 99214 or 99204. When it's so interesting, you are placed in this environment and you are made to think that this is the norm. When people from outside of this environment are thinking, wait, why are you letting somebody else dictating your worth?
Mm-hmm.
Whether that is financial or innate worth, self worth. And I haven't figured out a way to easily instill self worth and self confidence. And I think that has to do with somewhat from childhood upbringing and also your current friends around you. Are they there to lift you up? Are they there to reaffirm your beliefs and your worth versus someone who's there to constantly knock you down?
Mm. And your beliefs about yourself often lead to who you tolerate and you choose to surround yourself with. Some people are with us by happenstance and maybe your close family, even though you can choose to set boundaries, maybe, right? Not that's kind of from a privileged state. Some people can't move outside of their immediate environment. But when I had lower self-esteem and had zero self-confidence, I tolerated work environments that validated that I was worthless. And I read a quote by Danielle Laporte, who is an author, I think, from Canada. And she had a quote that says, "The world reflects back at you how much you value yourself." And of course, we don't want to gaslight people again using the terminology. There are really oppressive environments that will oppress you no matter what you believe about yourself. And ultimately, that can really mess with your head.
Yep.
True. And if we choose to believe that, we may continue to tolerate it without saying, you know what, I'm out. And so it starts with awareness, as you were saying. It's like learning self awareness, giving yourself self compassion, learning what that feels like. And for people who it wasn't innate or it wasn't something that they're familiar with, they can be quite averse, as I was. So I get it, to feeling positive emotions or love, so that they may feel like this is not familiar. And that's where having a therapist and having, the people who can provide them with that safe space to explore is like, why does this feel wrong? Even if it's something that is in your greater good, that's creating safety and showing you like you really matter, you are worthy. If it's not something that you experienced before, you could really resist it.
Sounds like you're saying that self-awareness, number one, and number two, possibly seeking help
Absolutely.
may allow you to get out of this rut.
Absolutely. With people who, as you pointed, there's going to be people who don't want you to get out of the rut, right? Whatever their issues are, they may thrive off of keeping people down. People who holistically want you to see the value of yourself as a human, that see it before you do, like borrow their beliefs. I just had a physician who offered me her belief in me yesterday. She's like, borrow it until you have it yourself. When I was having suicidal ideation, I borrowed other people's hope. I was very medically compromised from an eating disorder, and I didn't have any hope that I could improve. I borrowed it from other people. Surround yourself with people who provide you hope. Borrow that hope until you can have your own.
And I often wonder, as I learn a little bit about your story, I wonder if your anorexia was a way for you to rein back control.
Mm. Yeah, is part of it was control. It's numbing. It's like an addiction, For me, the role is similar to workaholism, to scrolling on social media, to substances. So people who eat more, like anorexia, so I cope in a way that not eating makes me feel better. Well, society will champion me for that. Whereas people who, when they're not feeling well, eating can make them feel better, and they're shamed for that in our society. So that's a problem, right? Like the things that were showing up for me as eating disorder behaviors were actually cheered on, like celebrated and glorified. And there's a lot wrong with our medical system with weight bias and our society's diet culture and what we're so infatuated by. So I think I was looking for value and worth that.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that's definitely a factor for sure with the fad and the diet culture. Now that said, I'll share something very personal. Is that I had familiar high cholesterol, and about 2 years ago, I had a silent MI, and I had a stroke. Landed me in the neuro ICU. So although diet and weight, we don't want to shame people for it. There is a strong role between your family history, your diet, and your weight and its association with bad health outcomes. So I do, when I perform a lot of vasectomies, and unfortunately, a lot of these are young 30 some odd year olds who are overweight or obese. I do make it a point to bring that to their attention, that their BMI, obviously BMI is not perfect, that their BMI, the typical guy who's got trunk obesity, and not the muscular guy with the high BMI, but these guys, I tell these guys, I need you to make sure that you are watching your health, because not just for yourself, but you have a family that you need to be responsible for and take care of. So I'm telling you this out of a place of love and compassion, that I want you to continue to live a healthy life. And so I do address the weight issue when they, often these guys are coming in with hypertension that is not recognized, systolic and diastolic hypertension. So on one hand, we want to not shame people on their weight. On the other hand, physicians should not be restricted in addressing something that is very, very obvious that can threaten the health of the patient.
Yeah, I think it's the holistic perspective, right? Because if a patient's overweight and has an eating disorder, right? Or if a patient, their weight is compromising their health in some way, supporting them such that when anyone loses weight, if they're higher risk for an eating disorder or if their weight came a certain way because food's a coping strategy, how can I support this person holistically, right? So for me, anorexia meant that I almost died from not eating enough, right? So I know that being underweight is also a health risk. And for patients, I work in cancer. If you start with a low BMI, that's lower prognosis. And so we are very considerate in viewing the person holistically. And I appreciate you capturing that, yes, there are some risks associated with different behaviors that typically impact your weight. So let's see what relationship people have with food and availability. You know, there's some food deserts where people say, well, this is what I can afford. So seeing the person, understanding their complete situation and supporting them, just like you said, is I'm not someone that says that weight doesn't impact health, because all spectrums of weight can impact health, and people who are at an average rate can also have a lot of health problems depending on what's going on underneath. So I appreciate you bringing it up.
Yeah, I was just slightly overweight, but by all standards, people look at me and say, "Oh, you're just fine." But then there I was on being flown on a helicopter to Barrow Neurologic Institute. Yeah, it
And
also so it's that brings up another situation. So as I was being wheeled onto the helicopter, I had a big sense of peace, if you will, because I didn't know what was going to happen. In that I had a will, I had a trust, I had health power attorney, and you start taking account of your life, right? Have I done everything the way I would have wanted to do, how I would live my life if today was my last day?
mm,
And you and you work in cancer, we have seen people come and go. So I was already keenly aware of our mortality. I don't care who you are. I was very keenly aware. So at that time, as I was being wheeled onto the helipad, I had a big sense of peace. And that's when I realized, okay, I'm going to continue doing what I'm doing, except I'm not going to be so tight-fisted with my money. I'm going to use my money and live a little bit more. So
wow.
that was my lesson.
I'm so glad that you shared that, and I'm really glad that you recovered. So thank you for sharing that story and your vulnerability as well as that reflection.
Yeah, often you don't realize, uh, number one, how lucky you are until something like that happens, or something like that happens to you, or happen to somebody you love. Then you start looking at things from a different perspective. So I'm hoping that sharing and listening to this message will allow the viewer and the listener a way to kind of reflect back on what I'm doing today. Is that going to serve me? Is that going to prolong my happiness or help me reach my happiness? Or is this something that is going to drag me down and harm me in the long run? On my deathbed, am I going to look back on my life saying that I did it my way and I'm glad I did?
That hits me hard. Um, the reason is when I was in surgery, I was admitted into a residential treatment center for my eating disorder. My heart rate was really low. And my heart was too low to stay at this residential treatment center. So they put me in a regular hospital. And the person's like, well, your heart rate's really low because you're not eating right enough. And they couldn't keep me because they didn't have an eating disorder unit. And so I was on telemetry watching my heart rate, and people kept coming in like, "Are you alive still?" I'm like, "Yep." And they're like, "I don't know if you're going to stay alive." Right. And here I am thinking a lot of what you said. I had so many regrets. This is not, I mean, I just put my head down. And, when we're thinking about lifestyle, not only weight, but stress, right? And like, oh, just our chronic stress and how that impacts our cardiovascular health and our mental health and our, just systemic health. And because the hospital couldn't keep me, I was like, oh, well, what do I do now? Well, I didn't have the coping skills at the time to say, well, I'm just going to stop my residency and rest or whatever I need for my body to heal. I wasn't ready to face that. I went back into residency because it's like, well, I don't know what to do right now, but I wasn't yet ready to face what was at the core that was driving me into this workaholism and into my eating disorder was this lack of self-care and lack of self-compassion and belief that my worth was tied to my work, which is why my messaging is not to tie your worth, just like you said, to your RVUs, to your title, to your work, because if we lose that, like physicians will grab so hard onto their title because without it, they're so empty. And I feel like once, if something happens that threatens that identity as a physician, I think that also often leads to people having suicidal thoughts and the difficulty saying, I'm going to take care of myself now. I'm going to take a step back from this because who am I without that? And at that point, I would rather have been not alive. So I took a chance, and I don't know why I've survived, but I was thinking about this today. I'm like, well, there's a reason I survived. And I think I have to live it to give it, meaning sharing the messages just like you are. You've just showcased. It's very serendipitous. And I had no idea that that was part of your story. But just this morning, I'm like, I have to create more meaning from that experience because that will also hold me accountable to really live my true values.
Well, you are doing it by this sharing your message. Number one, your articles, the blog posts, and I think it was on Kevin and MD. But getting the message out there, sharing your story about what's going on, what happened to you, so that when other people going through the same thing, they realize, oh, I'm not alone. And so much of medicine, we have such a strong status quo bias. We do it this way because this is the way we've always done it. And that stifles innovation, stifles progression in a practice, in a urology practice and medical practice in general. So I buck the trend. I fight status quo bias every single day. When someone says, I do this way, I always ask why. Is there a better way? When I meet a new surgical tech, the first thing I say is, you have seen a lot of other people do the same procedure that I have done. I want you to tell me how I can do this better. So fight that status quo bias every single day. Just because you are in a semi-oppressive type of a situation in your residency, in your practice, it does not mean it has to be that way. Seek a like-minded group, my Facebook group, another Facebook group. There are groups and support groups in your specialty of your peers going through the same thing. And some people have come up with different ways to improve your situation so that aminotrivia, so that death by 1,000 cuts is not going to weigh you down. It's not going to make you quit, because I can't have urologists and other physicians burning out. That's a big problem because I'm getting older.
Yeah.
I've already had to use healthcare. My prostate's getting bigger. I can't have my peers burn out and quit. I need prostate help, right, in the future. So I'm doing this. I'm paying it forward in a way for a selfish reason. I don't want other physicians burning out. I don't want them to quit because there's so much need for our services. There's a shortage of urologists. There's a shortage of physicians. And we are such a valuable commodity. And to go back to what you mentioned before, you quoted someone who says your worth is perceived by others depending on how you see yourself. And I harp on that all the time in my Facebook group, that we are being gaslighted
Mm.
into thinking that our worth is only this much. Our worth is according to what third party surveying group says that your median income of your peers is this much. Well, that's that's survey data. Number one. Number two, does that align with your values? Do you think you're only worth this much?
Mm.
Right. So we're constantly, I guess, is regression to the mean, right? Regression to, here's the whatever entity, I'm not going to name the name of the group, but the 4-letter group's designation of the median revenue or median work RVUs for a urologist, for a physician. Your worth is not dictated by somebody else. Your worth is dictated by you, and only you can answer how much you're worth. And if you think that your worth is only this much, other people are going to see your worth as only this much.
Hmm. Stop attacking me, John. I'm just kidding.
I'm not attacking you.
I'm kidding you. That's a very sarcastic way to say
Yeah.
I resonate a lot. That felt like it was talking to me, and I'm sure so
Oh
many
no,
people
I felt the
listening.
same way, because until because I'm literally in the thick of it.
Yes.
I am doing the 99213s, the 99214s, the modifier 25s, the counting the work RVUs. I monitor my work RVUs, not benchmarking it to that group, that surveying group, but I benchmark it to my performance in the past,
Mm.
right? As a way to, as one of my KPIs that I keep track of. So I'm in the thick of it. That work RVU is converted to a dollar amount depending on the conversion factor. And yet conversion factor is dictated by somebody else, again, telling us how much we're worth. So I'm excited for you as you go into psychiatry. You'll have a lot better control over what you're worth, because often psychiatrists are not participating in any third party. And there's definitely a lot of need for psychiatry, especially now. And social media. Oh, here's the other thing I want to bring up. Fear of other people's opinions. Don't have that. FOPO.
FOPO. This is crazy. That just came up in a conference, but please share more.
Yeah. So you and I are out there on social media, YouTube and things like that. We post on social media platforms. You're going to get haters. Okay. You're going to get haters for, when I was starting my solo practice, urologists are like, oh, okay, well, good luck to you, right? You're going to have doubters in life. The message I have for you is live your life. Don't give a about what other people are thinking about you, okay?
Yeah.
Here's the thing. The video that I shared with you of an interview that I did, I'm sure no one noticed that I had a big old bug bite on my forehead. Now, if you go back and, yeah, you didn't notice, but I noticed. So what does that tell you? You are worried more about your own zits than somebody else.
Yes. Yep. And I wanted you showcase this well, like social media. It's not about us, right? The message that's right now, it's from our lens, from our experience, but it's for the audience, and hope that it's serving the audience in some way, that the people listening, we hope you get something out of it, what you came here to learn. And if you did, please share in the comments below. We would love to hear from you. But
And
right,
subscribe. Don't forget to subscribe.
and make sure to subscribe and go over to John's multiple channels. And if you're a urologist and you are wanting to thrive in private practice, check out the Thriving Urology Private Practice Group on Facebook. But so let's take it back to even rounds. So when we're in med school residency, I was, a lot of people are nervous to present the patient on rounds. When I was in gynonc, one of the fellows said, to me and the students who were with me, this isn't about you. It's not about how you look. It's about, did you get the information out that we need in order to best serve this patient? Like, right? And that's the same on social media. Like, don't chase the followers, don't chase the likes.
Vanity metrics.
Don't take it personally. When people, haters show up, say, be curious. I wonder what that says about them. How do they perceive my message? Could I have conveyed it better? What can I learn from it? And if you're feeling a certain way, Like it doesn't feel good to get someone's rejection, right? Doesn't feel good. But what's coming up for you? And like there's times on social media, I'm like, oh, the vulnerability, I don't know if I can handle it because people are able to just say whatever they want about me. What that taught me was I have to claim my own narrative. I have to know enough about me that if people are saying false things, though I know that's false, right? I'm not going to absorb it and I'm going to keep showing up. I'm not going to go out and engage with these people who are trolls, right? If there needs to be a one statement comment, then, fine. But learning about yourself is a big part of social media and how you navigate it and take in the comments, whether they're good or bad.
Yeah, and also speaking of vanity metrics, which drives a lot of patient referral, are Google reviews, online reviews. Same thing, right? Don't worry so much about it, and learn how to. So first of all, learn how to respond to all of them. I respond to every single positive and negative review. There's a very formulaic and HIPAA compliant way to respond to every single one of those. But those people posting those types of reviews or throwing shade at you on your social media, on your YouTube videos, whatever it may be, you're going to get them, number one. And number two, I feel badly for those people that here I am trying to share information and yet you only see that's the only comment that you can make. So that's one. And number two, back to the zit example, we are more worried about our own problems than we are other people's problems. So when you think that, oh, I don't sound good, I don't look good, I have a zit on my forehead, I have learned to realize that the message that I'm sharing, the information that I'm sharing is more important than the zit on my forehead or the bug bite on my forehead. So get that information out there. Don't worry about what other people think. Don't worry about, so I drive a Subaru. You don't have to live up to somebody else's expectations. Live a life that is true to you, right?
Mm.
I don't drive the traditional doctor's car. I don't own boats. I don't own planes. Nope. I don't play golf.
I
I'm
don't
living
either.
my life. I'm living my life.
Yeah.
I'm producing content. I'm sharing information as my way to pay forward. So what is your why, right? Understanding your why. Why do you do what you do? And if you are not happy with your trajectory, then take the steps. Take Jillian's example and how she could overcome anorexia and feeling down and out and no choice and be able to turn things around. And I admire you because you are turning that into a kind of a current life calling to help other physicians. So it's validating what they're feeling and showing them that there's a way to come out of that. So I really admire you for that.
Well, it's definitely mutual. I feel that you're doing the exact same thing and learned from your health event as well as from your upbringing and how to turn it into a positive and pay it forward as well.
Yeah, that's the messaging that we share.
Yep. And
Pay
I like
forward.
when you said a life true to you, I'm like, well, it's currently the name of the channel. It very much aligns, fortunately. And for what's coming up for you in this life, what are you looking forward to as the American dream that you've created and not so much the one that was laid out for us?
So, yeah, I try to be a sponge. I try to learn as much as I can about a lot of different topics. I'm currently interested in macroeconomics, so I'm learning about macroeconomics, and personal finance is always a hobby because I came from that scarcity mindset. And right now, I am I'm trying to be better at public speaking because I realize that those who are good speakers have a lot of influence. And if I really want to share my message, I need to be a good speaker. And coming from a place where I didn't understand, didn't know English, and to get to where I am, is still a work in progress. So I'm constantly trying to improve my public speaking. So right now I have several public speaking engagements, one in April, one in May, one in August, and I do a lot of this type of stuff online as well. Every time I do one of these, it's a possibility, it's a trial, it's a way for me to improve the next time that I give a presentation so that I can share this message better. So that is currently what I do. Other than than having a lot of hobbies like photography and things like that. So make sure you have a hobby. That's the other thing. To find meaning in life is not just in medicine. You can't define your life by medicine. You have to have other hobbies, because once you retire, what are you going to do? I ask my patients, I ask my older, urology, a lot of older patients. I ask these older patients, what keeps you going? And a lot of them have said, having a purpose in life. Whether that is working at Walmart, whether that is taking care of the grandkids, whether that is doing something outside of just sitting in front of the TV. Having a purpose is what keeps a lot of my older patients going.
Wow. I was going to ask if you had any last takeaways, and I think that one was a profound one to leave on, unless you have other ones that you would like to share with the audience.
Nope. And you can connect with me at JCLINMD on all the social media platforms, TikTok, Instagram, X, YouTube, Facebook, etc.
And who should connect with you?
I think anyone who's interested in improving their medical practices,
Yeah,
or anyone who's interested in photography,
or just talking about life, right?
or just talking about life.
For people who were not present, when you were at a group table, many of us are like, man, we can't get into this urology Facebook group, huh? Because the things that you are sharing, it's so needed in medicine, and also the humanity that you bring into it. Like you said, who should connect with you? Anyone that's tuned into this. And I will make sure to share all your social media handles in the description box below.
Thank you so much for the privilege of your time, Jillian. I really appreciate it.
Well, likewise, John. Thank you so much for joining me today.